back. So now that when we log in, it actually showed that it will actually go to the right page, but I also want to kind of make sure that when I'm logging out, I'm being redirected to the login page. I also want to make sure that people cannot just start putting in, like going to the login page directly right here, because there's no reason to go to the login page when you're already logged in and stuff like that. So I want to kind of help the user by adding some information into my routes so that they can actually figure out if they should go somewhere else depending on the route, depending if they're logged in or not. So we're going to do that by using an AuthGuard. Now the AuthGuard is a pretty basic thing in Angular actually, but still you can go under Docs, under Fundamentals, under Routing Navigation, and all the way down to the bottom to kind of figure out how to use an AuthGuard. And this is their example right here of using the AuthGuard. We're going to do it a bit simpler, but still we can use a lot of the code just to get started. First of all, we need an AuthGuard service right here, so we're going to add that one in our code. Jumping to the code, jumping into my terminal here, and I'm going to do an ng generate service AuthGuard. Now, I could just add this all the way in the root, but I actually want to add this inside my shared folder under the auth library, auth shared AuthGuard, right? So we're going under auth shared, and here it's going to be placed. Now it's a service, so it's going to generate two files. It's going to generate the actual service file and then the spec file that we can use for testing later on if we want to. Let's just keep them both because I want to use testing another day. So we're not going to call this the AuthGuard service, and I just want you guys to know that you can change the class name here. It won't affect anything in the rest of your code. It's just a class name. It doesn't matter what you call the class compared to the file name, but again, it's a good idea to keep the naming pretty much the same. But I'm using this name because that's what they're using in Angular. They just want to use the name AuthGuard. Now to call yourself a real AuthGuard, we need something, an interface called the canActivate interface right here. So we're going to implement that in our AuthGuard, implement canActivate. Now again, I'm just showing you this manually right here to kind of show you guys that when you use an interface, you pretty much just have to add some kind of function. And in this case, the function is just called canActivate. So we're kind of just specifying that we need to have this function available right here to kind of call ourselves an AuthGuard that implements this contract right here, the canActivate contract. So to call ourselves an AuthGuard, we also need to kind of return something in this function, and in their case, it needs to be true or false. So let's just keep this for now. Now we kind of have a very simple way to kind of just return true or false depending on if we're activated or not. But how do we know if we're logged in or if we're not logged in? Well, we are going to use something we created earlier called the auth service. Yay, reuse of code. So here we have the auth service right here, and that auth service is of course going to be used from the one we built earlier called the auth service. So that's the type. Now that means that now we can actually start, depending on if we are activated or not, we can actually start using this auth service. So we can just pretty much say auth service, you need this keyword, this.auth service right here to kind of say we want to use that service, and then we can ask is authenticated because we made that function. There we go, that's all we have to do. Now this will actually start triggering if we're logged in or not. Even though this is actually an observable, the auth service does understand observables. Let's try and see if it works. To use this guy, we need to kind of add the AuthGuard to one of our routes. So let's try and jump down to one of our routes in the routing module, and let's just say that you should not be allowed to activate yourself. So we'll ask if this guy can activate. You should not be allowed to do that unless you're actually logged in, and this is how simple it is. We're just saying before you activate and show this page, just run through the AuthGuard and figure out if he is allowed to log in or go to this page. Let's see if it works. Jumping over here, logging out. So we'll just try directly to write albums up here in the page. Let's see what happens. It actually redirects me to the main page because we're not allowed to go to that albums page without being logged in. So the AuthGuard kind of works right now. Okay, let's try and jump back here. We're not satisfied yet because I said I wanted to kind of be able to, when I go to the albums page, if I'm not logged in, I actually want to be redirected to the logins page. So let's just do a bit more here. We want to kind of figure out if we're logged in before we actually explain if we are authenticated or not. So what we'll do is we'll add a router in here as well so we can kind of reroute ourselves, just like we did last lesson. I want to add a router here of the type router. There we go. I need another thing in here. I need to kind of be able to actually figure out using a map if I'm logged in or not. So I'm going to again make the import that we used earlier as well. of the type rxjs, like this, /add/operator/map, like this. Then we can go in and we can make a small check inside the actual code right here if we're logged in before we actually return it right here with the can activate. So now I can call the .map function right here. Now the map function again is pretty much just going to give me the is logged in keyword so I can use it. So I'm just going to call this is logged in. That's just a Boolean value. I'm going to use that value to figure out if I am not logged in. If not is logged in, then I want to use the router again. So I'll say this, the router. I want to say navigate by URL. I want to be redirected to the login page like this. There we go. So now I'm pretty much just forcing the user to actually figure out if he's logged in or not. And if the user is not logged in, he's being redirected to the login page. And then in the end here, I can just return this login because I actually don't want to make any changes to the is logged in information right here. I just want to resend that back into the AuthGuard right here. Let's try and see if this works. Jumping back to my code, now I'm going to do a /albums again, and notice I'm being redirected to the login page. Except I'm not, because I'm still getting an exception. It seems that I cannot use the AuthGuard until I actually add him as a provider. That makes sense. That makes sense. So you have to go into your auth module. Just like we have the auth service, I also have an AuthGuard available right now. Why am I showing you guys these issues? Because you're going to face issues like this. It's going to happen for you, so I might as well just show you that I fail now and then, because you'll do the same. Going into the albums again, and notice right now I'm going to be redirected to the login page. There we go. Let's try and log in and see if we can then go to the albums page just to test it. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Log in. Okay, going to the albums page. It worked. Sweet. Let's just try and log out again. And it seems that we are staying on the albums page, so it's not quite as I expected. Let's just go into our actual logout function right here, and that's inside the toolbar right here. So in the toolbar right now, when we are calling the logout function right here, we're actually calling the logout, but we're not using the logout information for anything. So we just add the then keyword here to kind of say that when we're logging out, we want to reroute here as well, right? So we need a router again. Now this is just rinse and repeat, but now you guys are almost experts at using the router. Well, let me just try it again here, adding the router. There we go, using the router. So when this happens, when we're actually logged out, let's just try and use the router. This.router.navigate by URL. Where do we want to go? Well, when we're logging out, we want to go to the login page again. There we go. So now the logout should work as well. And again, we can actually pop up a message again with a snack bar. Do that yourself, where you just say, then we are logged out. Congratulations. Jumping back here, let's just try and log in again. We have one more thing we need to fix this lesson before we actually end this. So let's just try and log in. You're logged in. When I'm logging out, boom, I'm going back to the login page. Sweet.